especially since the Christians did include these into their canon. So even though it was preserved by the Christians, it is part of our Jewish heritage, and we could learn a lot about history and culture from these books, but it's not on the level of the Torah. Shalom and welcome to my channel. My name is Tamar. I'm a Jewish wife and mother living in Israel. And in this video, we will discuss the external books to the Bible. What is the Jewish Orthodox perspective on these books? Are we allowed to read these books? Are they forbidden? So let's begin with a historical timeline. The 24 books of the Bible end around the time of the Second Temple. So we have the First Temple, which was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonian, in 586 BCE. Now, the Babylonian Empire is replaced by the Persian Empire. Oceans rise, empires fall, and the Persians are the one that gave us the permit to build the Second Temple. We basically have four phases of the Second Temple. We have the initial part, which is the Persians allowing us to come back to our homeland and rebuild the temple. They're replaced with the Greek Empire. Then we have an independent Hashmonaim kingship, and the Romans, who at 70 CE destroy our temple, and we begin the 2,000 years of exile. So the Bible actually ends here, around the time of the beginning of the Second Temple. We have the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, who describe the Jews coming back to Israel and building the Second Temple. The early days of the Second Temple is also around the time where Anshei Knesset Hagdolah, the Grand Assembly, decided on the 24 books of the Bible. Now, there are some texts that are not part of the 24 books. We refer to these as Sefarim Chitzonim, external books, and they were written mainly in this part of the Second Temple. They're written with a biblical style, and a lot of times the storylines are about biblical figures. But in Jewish Orthodox tradition, as we'll explain soon more in depth, we make a clear distinction between the 24 books of the Bible and these external books. Prophecy versus not prophecy. Now, we discussed this in depth in our previous video, so I suggest you watch that first. But basically, the 24 books of the Bible include the 5 books of Moses, which are the highest level of prophecy. Then we have prophecies, specifically the ones that were needed for future generations were the ones that were written. And we have the books of the Ketuvim written, which are on the lowest level of prophecy, called Ruach HaKodesh, the Divine Spirit. Also, we mentioned the fact that the Bible was finalized around the time that prophecy was ending in the world. So these external books that take place mostly in this time are necessarily after the time that there's no more prophecy in the world. Therefore, they're not on the minimum level of Ruach HaKodesh, Divine Spirit. And even a few of these texts that were from an earlier period, we still say they are not on the level of Ruach HaKodesh and therefore not included in the Holy Bible. So the common thing among these books are that they are not written even with Ruach HaKodesh, which is the lowest level of prophecy. Lost and found. So even though most of these texts were originally written in Hebrew, some were written in Aramaic or Greek, the Hebrew version wasn't preserved, and we only have the Greek version today. One famous example of this is of Ben Sira. Only the Greek version remained until in 1896 in the Cairo Geniza. They found parts of it from Hebrew, and what's really fascinating is that we are actually able to learn a few new Hebrew words that we didn't know previously by comparing the Hebrew version found in this Geniza with the Greek version. The reason that the Hebrew version wasn't preserved was, first of all, it was not included in the 24 books of the biblical canon. So it's much easier preserved when it's in the canon. And not only that, but these books didn't really stand a chance, since at some point there was a struggle against these books, even a prohibition set against them by our sages. One of the reasons of the prohibition was that it was essential to make a clear distinction between the 24 holy books of the Bible written with prophecy and divine spirit compared to these external texts that may talk about biblical figures and are written with a biblical language but are not written with divine spirit. We're not allowed to read Ben Sira as if he were a continuation of the Bible. There's a clear distinction between these 24 books and, for example, Ben Sirah. It's not on the same level, especially since the Christians did include these into their canon. Tirgum Shivim, the Septuagint, which is a massive Greek translation of the Bible, played a crucial role in introducing the early Christians these books. Catholics include some of these fully into their canon on the same level, while, from my understanding, mostly Protestants include these books but don't have them at the same level of the canonical holy books. So even more so, we wanted to create a separation from them as well. The early Christians were in fact Jews, and it took a few generations before Christianity broke off and became a complete separate religion. So we wanted to strengthen the canon of the Bible and the oral teaching, as well as to protect our distinct Jewish identity. So bottom line today, is there still a prohibition? Are Jews allowed to read these? This struggle has been basically resolved, right? We have 24 very clear books that are completely different from the others, and we know that. So there is a clear distinction between us and the Christians, so we are much more relaxed about this prohibition. However, it's crucial to remember that these are not sacred according to Jewish law. And reading from them is not like learning Torah, right? It's more like learning literature or history, especially since some of these books align fully with our oral tradition, but some of them may have some ideas or teachings that are not in full alignment. For example, Sefer HaYuvalim, Jubilees, is written from a Tzedoki cult, and it's not from the Proshim, which is where rabbinical Judaism came from. Another example is Maccabim Aleph, which tells the story of the battles of the Maccabees. So we could treat these as historical books, and we could learn a lot about the culture and history, but we don't have to treat these as sacred or as fully true. So even though it was preserved by the Christians, it is part of our Jewish heritage, and we could learn a lot about history and culture from these books, but it's not on the level of the Torah. So if you can only spare 30 minutes and you have to choose between studying and learning from Ben Sirah versus Mishlei Palms, definitely better to choose a biblical book. So this was a short explanation about Sefarim Chitzonim, external books. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and you may enjoy my 2 previous videos in this series, one about the basics of the Hebrew Bible, and the second one about 7 ways the Hebrew Bible changed the world. Hope to see you in my next video. Shalom!